more is effectiveness. hSenid, 15 years of empowering more.
See, when we used to go to school, we used to crack jokes and say, there is talent. There goes talent. And when we go for the Royal Thormian, I happen to be a Thormian, and we used to always say, we are going for the match to look at talent. What's that talent? In the dictionary, it says, attractive members of the opposite sex, with respect to all the lovely ladies here. In the dictionary, talent is referred to as attractive members of the opposite sex. So thank you, Dinesh, and Sampath and the hSenid team for inviting me to be a speaker today at your 15th anniversary conference, and I'm glad to be here. And also, I remember engaging with hSenid in 1999 with Sri Lankan Airlines. That was like 13 years ago, when you were a 2-year-old baby, I think, to install our EIM and the PMS systems there. And now I think you have come a very long way and matured and grown into a mini conglomerate, I suppose. So congratulations and all the best. And also to my friends here and some of my colleagues also, thank you for being here. And today when I speak, I'll try to speak using some of my personal experiences on the topic. So please pardon me if I sound that I'm bragging. It's not bragging, but I think the best way to impart knowledge to somebody is to talk from your personal experiences as well. First of all, I'll take you through the content of what I'm planning to speak. I have broken the content from the synopsis into 3 major areas. First is the synopsis itself, and then I'll talk to you on the definition of talent. And then we'll talk about the effective use of performance assessment methodologies to identify high potential employees, how to use performance assessment systems to identify high potential employees. Sorry, this technology sometimes. Talent assessment, the next point would be talent assessment, best practices and its implementation. And challenges faced by organizations in effective implementation of performance assessment methodologies in harnessing the best talent to ensure continuous organizational growth. So that's from the synopsis. So what I have done is broken the synopsis into 3 parts, and then I thought I'll build my presentation around it. Right? The synopsis itself, what I have received from hSenid, it goes on, as you can see it on the screen. How does an organization effectively use performance assessment methodologies to identify the high potential employees? The high potential employees is the key word there. Does the current performance assessment methods effectively support the organization in the talent assessment for the organization to meet its business challenges? What could be the best practices available and how effectively those could be implemented? What are the challenges faced by an organization in effective implementation of performance assessment methodologies to harness the best talent to ensure continuous organizational growth? So that's the broad area that has been given to me by hSenid, and so they took about a week from my work to prepare for today. Not joking. I had to ask my chairman permission, can I speak at this conference, and I shared this with him, and I said I might need some time to prepare. So I hope that covers most of your expectations in terms of what you hope to take away today from my talk. See, in everything we do in terms of employees, this is my personal belief, whether it be identifying the talent available, whether it be measuring performance of people, whether it be measuring of the potential, for all of these, the foundation should be a good and strong performance management system. We will later look at, and I think the last topic is why it fails and how it can be prevented. Most organizations, we fail in effective implementation. That's another story, right? But the important aspect is to have a very effective performance management system. That's the base, and that's the start. If you don't have that, then the transparencies that is here will not be there. People will be disgruntled, people will think, how are these things happening, and stuff like that. So the important thing in any organization is to build an effective performance management system. And if you have that, then from that you build the other pillars. It's like building a house. And I have identified only 4 pillars here, but you can build much more actually. These are the core areas. You use performance management for rewards and recognition. You use it for what we are talking today, talent, identifying talent pools for an employee retention, and specifically for those who are in the talent pools. For training and development, identifying the areas for improvement from the performance management system, and then identifying what initiatives should your employees go through. For succession planning, identifying successors for critical positions. So there are much more things that you can add to it. If you go back in history, when I started my career in 1974, that's 37 plus years ago, rewards and recognition was nothing to do with performance management. It was in the head of the boss, your immediate supervisor. That person used to decide how to reward an individual based on so many factors that is in his or her mind. And one of the primary factors, through my experience, was whether you like the person or not. If you don't like however good you are doomed. You were doomed, not anymore, I think, with all these systems and processes in place, hopefully. Right? So, effective performance management system will then give you create a meritocracy in your organization, where people then will be rewarded on merit and merit alone. Where there is low tolerance for mediocrity and high expectations, and creating a culture of merit, rewarding people on merit, on performance. Then you can drive transparency. It's not an easy thing to do, to drive transparency. I used to work in Citibank in Dubai about 15 or 16 years ago. I was the head of HR for the Gulf. And my boss, he was an Arab national, Ahmed bin Brek. Every time he used to tell me, Sunil, you are like an open book. You are too transparent. You tell everything to everybody. Not that I go around talking to everybody, but generally, what I used to do is keep people whom I think needs to be informed. People about any particular subject, a topic, any activity that's happening in the bank, I keep people whom I thought needs to be informed. But some organizations have a different culture. You keep informed the people who don't need to be informed. Have you come across that? And the people who really needs to be informed are not aware of anything till something happens. I remember when our chairman was moving out in 2009, early 2009, I was visiting one of our locations, and then I was driving together back with the HR manager of our agriculture sector, and suddenly there was a SMS from Adha Derana to say Mr. Tanki Vikramaratne, chairman of Hayleys, is resigning in July. I, being the HR head, didn't know. And Mr. Mohan Panditike would succeed. That, of course, we knew that Mr. Mohan Panditike would succeed him, but when we didn't know. So I immediately came back to office, and then we set in a process where corporate communication sends out employee broadcasts immediately before the newspapers and the other channels get to know, so that the employees are kept informed before the other stakeholders and external parties. Right. So information is very critical, and through information you create transparency. Of course, you have to be careful in what information you divulge to which people. Then, of course, employees have a sense of achievement. If you have a strong performance management system where people are recognized, they are rated, and then you get a high rating, you have a sense of recognition. And in organizations, I have experienced where there is a strong performance culture, everything about individual staff is about their performance rating. People sometimes are labeled with the performance rating. Again, going back to my Citibank days, I remember we had a rating scale of 1 to 5 in the PMS. 1 was the lowest and 5 was the highest. And there was this guy who was a product manager in consumer products. That's retail banking and various things, an Indian guy, and he was a very strong performer. He was always known as a 5 rated. The perception, it all goes on perception. Person was known as a 5 rated. Then the next year, for some reason or the other, he became a 4 rated. And she was so embarrassed that from a 5, he became a 4. He left us and joined next door at Standard Chartered Bank. He said, I am a 5 rated. I don't know why my boss, of course, there are discussions. They had discussions, various things. There would have been reasons why he was. But the performance culture was so strong that he felt embarrassed that his performance rating dropped by 1 notch. And he didn't want to continue in the bank. So that's the kind of culture that you need to create in an organization through performance. Where people talk performance and performance ratings of individuals. I think Mario would have spoken to you in the morning about analytics, and one of the things in analytics is about analyzing the performance of individuals. And looking at performance ratings for everything to do with an employee, where decision-making comes into play, data-driven decision-making. Right? So just to give you a base on that, moving on, let's look at the first, my topic is, what's the topic? I forget the topic, sorry. Where is your talent? Right. So before you ask yourself, where is my talent, I think we need to understand the definition of talent. If you look at the newspapers today for advertisements for people, hiring of staff, most of the time we say we are sourcing for the best available talent. Or if you are a high performer or a high energetic person, please join us. Right? But to my mind, talent, you don't recruit talent. This is my personal view. You might have different diverse views, so when it comes to question and answer, we can talk about it. My personal view is we don't hire talent, but we hire people. We recruit people who meet the minimum criteria and whom the interview panel, after having gone through steps in the process, identify this person is the most suitable person to be recruited, based on mostly what transpires during those various testing processes, during the conversations, and also looking at past performance of an individual through the CV and by talking to the individual. There is a saying that past performance is a predictor of future performance. Past performance is a predictor of future performance. When I look at a CV, first thing I look at is how many times has this guy changed jobs. If it's every 2 years, then you have a question mark in your mind for stability. Right? So we don't hire talent, but we hire people, and then we identify the talent once they start performing in the organization. So the definition of talent is about special aptitude that a person has. Something special about the individual. This is not mine, this is from the dictionary actually. High mental ability. And a person who possesses a group of competencies that are useful for an activity or activities in the organization. Right? So that to my mind is talent. And also the dictionary says what I said in my opening remarks, attractive females. You can refer the dictionary when you go back and it says that. So it's not something that I say. Right? So then the question is, how do we determine this talent when people are working in our organization? How do we identify talent? So to identify, I think you need different types of methodologies. One could be your performance management system like we spoke about earlier. And then of course the effective use of those performance management systems, and also identifying your high potential employees. So going back, what are the different types of performance assessments that can be used, which will also give you a flavor of the talent of the individual. Talent, again, is also about unrealized performance. The person is performing at a certain level, but the person has the, sorry, that's potential. I'll come back to that, sorry about that. So, your performance management systems need to identify how to identify the talent. One way, in the old days, talent was identified, like I said, through the performance file, personal file, where your boss wrote notes in your personal file. Every time you did something good or did something bad, there was a note in the personal file. But only the boss knew about it. Nobody else knew. That was in the old days, before the 80s and the 70s. Then we had one-way performance evaluations. That means a few people at senior levels discussed about the individual's performance and they made decisions, but the employee didn't know. But of course, they also identified this person has the talent and the ability and the potential to go into senior roles or higher roles than where the person is. And it was all in the people's heads, but they made sure that the individuals that were identified were put through various initiatives to prepare them for those roles. Then we had performance management systems with different dimensions. You have a set of dimensions, 5 or 8, and then you have different descriptors. So you read through these dimensions, the descriptors, and put a tick against that and say this person on this, for this dimension on this scale is here, or this person on this scale is here. But it could be one way, or sometimes it's shared with the employee as well. And then it matured and grew into becoming a two-way process of what we call 180 degrees evaluations, where a discussion took place between the employee and the immediate supervisor. And also there were different components brought in to the PMS. I remember in the early days, most organizations had only goals. Goals were the only thing that the person was measured against. Goals or objectives or KP, some call it KRAs, but we call it goals. Goals or objectives. 100% was on the achievement of goals. Then later on, other components were brought in. Goals, competencies, achievements, company values, how well is the person performing in those areas. And latterly, there is what we call also the 360 evaluations, which you are familiar with. Right? The problem with the 360 evaluations is that you should be careful in selecting those people who are going to evaluate a person. You have no choice about the boss. You have to take the boss, right, whether you like the person or not. Where the subordinates are concerned, and especially the peer group, you have to be extremely careful in selecting the peer group, otherwise you get a distorted view of the 360 evaluation. Because I have seen organizations select peers who are very remote from the individual who is being assessed. They are at the same level, but the guy even doesn't know him. So how do you expect the person to give a rating on the individual, and then it becomes distorted. So ideally it should be peers who work closely together with the individual who is being evaluated. And about 4 or 5 subordinates who are directly working with the boss. Then you get a well-rounded set of feedbacks on the individual. So through all this feedback, then you can come up with a way of measuring the capability of the individual. How capable is this person? How well the person is performing? And is this a person of value to the organization whom we want to retain at any cost? Sometimes companies retain people at any cost. If you are a very highly talented person. I remember at Sri Lankan Airlines in 2001, when we were bombed by the LTT and we lost half our fleet, we had to reduce 1,000 people. And we had a voluntary separation scheme which was highly successful. We hit the target within 1 week or 2 weeks. And among those, there were 2 people who applied to take the voluntary separation. And they were highly valuable people to the, and if they went, there would have been a huge vacuum in that area. So we spoke to those 2 people and said, you don't leave today, you leave after 2 years. But when you leave after 2 years, we will still pay you the same compensation that you would have received today. You know, we will pay you the same compensation that you will receive today if you leave in the company, but you leave after 2 years. And we gave a letter to that effect. And we paid the guy when he was leaving after 2 years. That was, we retained that person at any cost. A highly talented person, without him, there would have been a huge vacuum. Of course, you might then wonder, what about the backups? What about succession planning? Where is all that? Right? Because these are sudden things. We were not prepared for that sudden situation. So organizations, once you have identified your talent, then you have, talent means, like I said, people with special ability. And you determine that special ability, or people with a set of competencies who can perform activity or activities which are of value to the organization. Not just the job description. Right? Then you come up with programs for retention and keeping them in the organization. So we'll talk a little bit more about talent later on. So I just touched on using of different methodologies to identify talent. And to my mind, the primary way of doing that, again, is through an effective performance management system, which can, I keep using this word effective. Later on, we will look at, again, like I said, why these systems fail as well. Right? See, the other area on the screen you can see is identifying high potential employees. How do we identify high potential employees, and how do we know that people have potential? Like I said before, by mistake, potential could be described as unrealized performance. That means the person is performing at a certain level, but has the capacity, a gap, where the person given the opportunity can perform more tasks or more roles, or even perform well in a higher role. But before you identify that, you need to measure the potential of that individual. So one of the things that is lacking in most organizations are potential assessments. We have performance assessments, but we don't have potential assessments. Maybe some of your organizations who are present here, you may be having, but most often, 99% of the time, we have performance appraisals and performance evaluations, but we don't have potential evaluations or potential appraisals. Just to share with you this quadrant, potential and performance. On the left is the axis for high and low potential, and then on the right is the axis, at the bottom horizontally is the axis for performance, low and high. Here what I'm trying to share with you is that you can easily divide your employees by just knowing them very well, without even any potential appraisal or anything. Just by knowing them very well, you should be able to put them into these 4 quadrants by name. Maybe you can try this exercise when you go back tonight, where for each quadrant you write the names of your direct reports, where you think they fit in. Maybe some of you would have gone through this before. High performance, low potential. That is a group of employees. High potential, low performance. And they are what I call soldiers. That's the biggest workforce in an organization. They are high performing, but maybe not of that high potential. They are very good performers in their given roles, what they are doing now. Without them, you can't run a company. If everybody were high potential and star performers, then it will be a different story. Right? So majority of employees fall into this category of high-performing people who could be termed as the soldiers who do the work for you. Then this is a very interesting set of people, and that kills your time also most of the time, if you have these people working for you. High potential, low performance. Have you come across those people in your organization? High potential, low performance. And they are what I call the problem children. I had one person, an Iranian lady working for me in Citibank as my number 2. She was this. She has very high potential, but she performs only when she wants, not when we want. One day she is at the top, performing very well. She'll come and ask proactively, is there anything I can do? Can I be involved in this project? And all of that. Next day, she's very aloof. Even if you send her an email or send a text or ask her something, she won't even respond. But she has created a perception within the organization that she's a brilliant person. But only the immediate supervisor knows how brilliant she is. So sometimes the immediate supervisor is also helpless because of this perception. With respect to those who don't understand Sinhala here, there is a saying in Sinhala, kapanna bari atta imbino. You kiss the hand that you cannot cut or chop. Because these people have potential, they are useful to the organization. They have certain strengths which are of very high value, but they don't perform. And why they don't perform are for various reasons known to them. Maybe they want to take your job. They think if they don't perform, the boss will be got rid of, and that person will get the job. Or various psychological reasons. That is where psychometric testing and all of these aspects come in at recruitment, where these things can be thrown out. So sometimes you get this small group of people, it could be even 1 or 2 people who are problem children, and they take up a lot of your time. In one organization I worked, there was this very high potential guy, low performance. Every day when I'm about to go home, he'll come and sit in front of me. And when I see him coming, I slowly pretend to be busy, because I have to go. And when I know when this guy sits in front of me, it will be 7:30 by the time I get up. And he'll start talking about all sorts of things which is good for the employees, but in a very selfish way. What he thinks should be given to him, he will paint it that all the other employees should get it. One day he told me, why don't you give gold biscuits or bonuses? Gold tablets, biscuits. For bonus, up to the value of the bonus, give employees gold tablets. Then they won't be taxed. But the income tax authorities will hang the company, He doesn't realize that aspect. That is selfishness. And then he'll tell you, why he couldn't do something, why he couldn't do something rather than what he did. And the reasons he'll find are all false with the management. Why he couldn't do something. Not his faults. So, problem children, they are a pain, I tell you. Then, of course, you have the saddlewood. These are the people we are talking about, high potential, high performance, highly talented people. A small group of people. Every organization will have this. This is my term for high performing, high potential people. They should be treated like cotton wool, Slightest thing, they'll come and tell you, I'm leaving the company. And you don't want to lose the guy because he's of such high value to the organization. And the last one, the deadwood. Low potential and low performing people. So all these things can be identified through proper assessment situations. It doesn't have to be only performance management system. It can be assessment centers, various development initiatives, all of that. And of course, you need to have an exit strategy. First of all, a development strategy for this deadwood. And then if still they don't make headway, then an exit strategy. So, talking about potential, ideally, performance evaluation systems can have two major areas, one for appraising of performance and the other for appraising of potential. Or you can have two separate evaluation systems, one for performance and one for evaluations. What do you understand by the term potential? I said unrealized performance. You're performing at a certain level, but still there is an area that can be filled up. Now, one of the things that I would like to share with you, this business of potential. We might think a person is has high potential, but that potential can be brought out also due to certain factors. You have to have the right environment for the person to perform, for the person to give the ability for the person to display the potential. You need to have the right kind of boss who will give opportunities, not a person who will put down a person. You need to have the right kind of organizational culture where high potential people are encouraged to perform or given roles, given projects, that they are recognized. But if you are working in an intimidating environment, then your potential can be stifled. Then you cannot achieve that unfulfilled gap. Right? So potential is the highest level of work a person could ultimately be expected to handle. The highest level of work that a person could be expected to handle comfortably and successfully in a given work environment. High potential is the highest level of work that a person can be expected to achieve comfortably and successfully. Sometimes we struggle with our performance, right? Sometimes we spend hours and hours trying to do a small thing. That is not potential. That is about performance. Potential is where a person is given a role to perform, and the person performs it comfortably, successfully, and at the highest level that is expected. We will So, employees' future performance given the proper delivery and increased responsibility. Employee potential could also be measured through proper development of skills and increased responsibility. Because you know this person has the potential to perform, so you add on more responsibility, you add on more work, but of course you need to expose the person also for development initiatives to prepare the person for the role. Let's look at how do we measure potential. You need to measure potential when you have a succession plan, more than a talent pool, a succession plan. Talent pool, you look at performance of individuals. This is my belief, that you look at the performance of individuals. But for succession, you look at the potential, because you are looking at a person for a higher role than the person is currently in. Then you need to measure the potential of that person, the person's suitability for that higher role. Right? So what are those measures that you look at in a potential appraiser? Strength of character, some of the measures that you can build into a potential assessment. Strength of character of the individual. Ability to work under pressure. The persons measure the ability to work under pressure. The person doesn't buckle under pressure. Emotional stability of a person. Because the other day we were interviewing a candidate for one of our hotels. And then one of the interviewers, I thought the person was very good for the job, but over a question that was asked, the person showed some kind of emotion. And the interviewers felt that this person is an emotional person and may not be suitable for the role. So under any circumstances, a person with high potential should be able to display emotional stability, what we call EQ. We always keep looking at the IQ, but about the others, EQ and VQ. Vitality quotient, have you heard of that? When hiring not to match two people of that same vitality, then you'll have a fight. Right? The boss and the subordinate are both at the personality is such, at a high level of vitality. Most probably they'll be at loggerheads all the time. And somebody else will have to spend time trying to resolve it. Right? So EQ is a very key area for potential appraisals, emotional stability. Then personal drive and energy. When you are measuring potential, you should see whether this person has the personal drive and energy for that next level that you are looking at. Or is it a person who falls sick all the time? Or is it a person who, after working for 8 hours can't do any more? Can the person go today work in one location, tomorrow in another location, day after in another location? Enthusiasm, personal drive, and energy. Then logical and analytical ability. Innovation and a sense of realism also. Somebody who takes account of the realities of a situation before making a decision. So these are some of the things that can be built into a potential appraisal, but what you should not do is use these criteria in isolation of one another. You should use all of them together. Of course, you can add to this list much more so that you get a well-rounded idea of the potential of the individual. And also, you should not look at the age or gender of an individual when you're looking at the person for measuring the potential of the person. Maybe the age comes in if you're looking at, somebody is retiring in 60 years. Now, this guy is high potential, but he's 59, like me. I'm 59. Probably next year I have to retire. Right? Then I won't be in line for succession. But I have also got to retire next year, and my boss also has to retire next year. So sometimes you look at age, but not gender. And potential appraisals should be ideally done by a panel, not like a performance appraisal where it's one-on-one. A panel of people who has knowledge about the individual. They discuss on this criteria, and then they agree and come to consensus. So why do we also do potential appraisals, and why do you measure potential? Like I said, it could be for succession planning at any level. It doesn't have to be at the senior levels, right from the top. A junior executive being identified for a senior executive's role. Then you measure, does this person have the potential to take on that role? Because sometimes we promote people to what? A level of incompetence. Sometimes we promote people to a level of incompetence. We think the person has the potential if you don't have a proper potential evaluation. And then you put that person in the higher role, and here the guy was performing very well as a performer in the previous role. And you have lost that, and you have lost the new position. Arun said I was in the hotel industry before, and I was the training manager at the Galadari Meridian when it was first opened. That was in 1984, I think. I was in the pre-opening team. And we had this restaurant captain in the coffee shop. It was called the Brasserie, the coffee shop at the time at the Meridian. It was managed by a French hotel chain belonging to Air France. He was excellent. He was an excellent captain, a senior captain he was. A senior captain is a person who is in charge of a section of a restaurant. Not the restaurant manager, but in charge of a section. And the guy is expected, apart from supervising, also serve the guests. And he was damn good at doing that. But the HR manager at the time wanted to promote this guy to a restaurant manager's role. And I said, don't do it, because I knew he didn't have the potential. At that time, we didn't have this potential appraisals. It was very subjective. But I said, don't do it. He's a very good captain, but he will never succeed in the role of a restaurant manager. But in spite of that, he was promoted, but within a year, he left the job, because he just couldn't handle the job of a restaurant manager. He still continued to function as a senior captain. Sometimes we promote people and they continue to do the same job. Sometimes we promote people and they become incompetent in the new role. Sometimes we promote people for the sake of promoting, because the guy has been in a job for so many years, so we need to promote, but they continue to do the same job. And it's an additional cost to the organization then. That is where job evaluations and job banding comes in, where you evaluate a job description. And then if the job gets evaluated at the higher level, then you look at the incumbent, whether the incumbent is suitable to move up to the next level. Right? So you do potential appraisals and you look at potential for succession planning, and also to identify specific development initiatives for an individual if the person is marked for a higher role. What is the gap between the current and the required status? And then you you identify for the next role, based on the competencies for the next role, what are the gaps the person has, and what development initiatives should the person go through. So potential is about the future and performance is about the past. That is the key differentiator in potential and performance. Right? Is that clear? Potential is about the future, performance is about the past. Potential relates to competencies for future performance. Potential relates to competencies for future performance. You have a set of competencies for a particular job role, and then you see whether this person is capable or has the competencies to perform in that role. If not, what are the gaps? And to address the gaps, what are the development initiatives the person should go through? And performance relates to goals, achievement of goals. But at some point, they get interlinked as well. Right? If you are a high performer, then you might become a high potential person for a higher role. But that is not necessarily so all the time. Most of the time it is so, but may not be all the time. And good performance in the past may not be an indicator of likely performance in a new role. Like I said before, this guy, the senior captain, being promoted to a restaurant manager. Good performance in the past may not be an indicator for likely performance in a role the person has not been before. Past performance in a particular role could not be an indicator, if the person is promoted to a new role, that the person will perform well in that role. So that is again where the potential matters. Right? So we spoke a little bit about potential. Actually, we spent some time. Let's move on to the talent aspects. I think Mario spoke to you at length about talent and talent analytics and stuff like that. This is just to illustrate. You have on the left vertical axis strategic business value of talent assessments. Assessing talent. Like I said, when we hire people, we recruit staff, employees, and then we measure the talent through performance. How talented is the person? How valuable is the person to the organization? And all these things came into being from the 1990s when organizations start to look at people development in a very strong manner and with more emphasis on employee performance. Prior to that, most of the emphasis was on employee administration and controls, as you are all familiar with. Right? It was about more transactional activities rather than performance and development related activities. So with that came talent assessment. And then on the horizontal axis is talent intelligence. What intelligence can a talent pool bring into the organization? So the first level was that organizations looked at talent programs. Take a group of people and put them through a program without any structure for a talent management program. Every year you identify your high raters and then put them through various programs, but there is no structured plan for retention and development of those people. So that was the early days. So it had very low value to the business, and in terms of talent intelligence also it was very low. Then we matured to talent pools. This is where most organizations, I think to my mind, are right now in talent management. Where you create talent pools, you have a structure to manage the pool. In our company, we have a talent management program where we identify our performance management system is rated on a scale of 1 to 4. 1 is the lowest, 4 is the highest. Where we say assistant manager above roles, 15% of that population at assistant manager and above ideally should be in the talent pool. Minimum 15%. Of course, it can be less, it can be more, but the rule of thumb is 15%, which means all the 4 raters and the high 3 raters go into the talent pool. And then we have a talent committee, talent review committee, comprising the chairman and the group management committee member of that particular discipline where we review, and the head of HR. And they meet on twice a year, soon after the performance cycle is over, where these names are brought together, and then the talent review committee looks at each individual, where the boss of that area has to make a presentation about each individual. What are the strengths, what are the areas of improvement, and why is this person in the talent pool? Now again, I'm going back to this emphasis on effective performance management systems. If you have a performance management system, then if it is not effective, you will have a distorted talent pool. Why? Because you are taking the talent pool from your performance ratings. So these performance ratings has to reflect the true performance of the individual. And that is the biggest challenge in any organization, to arrive at the bell curve and all that. You know, that you have few 4 raters, then a little bit more on the 3, and the bulk of it, the soldiers, which I said at 2, and then a few people at 1. But we being human beings, we like to please our people because rewards are linked to the performance rating. So we sympathize rather than empathize. We sympathize, and then we rate the guy higher. We know in our mind, in our heart, that this guy is a 1 rater, but we rate the guy 3 sometimes, or most often, or 2. So your whole rating is skewed towards the 4s and the 3s. So if you ask the company within your group to give you a list of the people in the talent pool and you give a benchmark, they should be all 4s and high 3s, you will have a whole lot of them. But in real fact, they may be at a lower level of performance. So in an organization where there is a high performance culture, people will know because there is a perception. The moment you say this guy is a 4 rater, people will say, what 4 rater? He can't even do this properly, how can he be a 4 rater? So credibility in the system also matters, right? So that is where validation should come in, where management teams sit together and where you are asked to justify each person's performance rating. And then before it's communicated to the employees, where everybody is on the same page and says, yes, this guy is a 4 rater. And the credibility in the system is when the employees also, the others say, yes, that guy is a 4 rater. And when the employee accepts, yes, I am a 1 rater. I screwed up. I didn't perform. So my boss is right in rating me 1. But what happens most of the time is that we disagree when we are at a lower end of performance. Right? So identifying talent pools is not easy because of this reason. You get the wrong people into the talent pool. So then what most organizations do is what they call the forced ranking. Forced, F-O-R-C-E-D, forced ranking. Especially for talent pools and for various things, the immediate supervisor is told, take a piece of paper, write the names and rank them now on a scale of 1 to 4. 1 is the lowest, 4 is the highest, according to what you think is the performance level of the individual as of now. We did this at Citibank during the Gulf War in 1990. We had to downsize globally, Citicorp, by 10%. 20% of our headcount. And we were told in each country, identify your 1 raters and your 2 raters, because the 5 was the highest, 1 was the lowest. And each of the supervisors were told, take a list, write down. And my boss was a Greek guy called John Karkalios. He was called chief of staff. I had to tell him, John, you don't have a job from tomorrow. My boss, the CEO, called and said, you know, chief of staff also has to go. So that's how it works. You do a force ranking and identify the people, and then said, no discussion, 1s and 2s go. 3, 4, and 5 stay. Right? So sometimes we have to do these brutal things as well as for the sake of the organization. What we most of the time do is, we don't do things for the sake of the organization, but we do it for sake of ourselves. Because we want to be nice to the guys, we want to be happy, we don't want any displeasure among our subordinates. We want to keep them happy and keep us also happy. And we are doing a disservice to the organization. Right? So talent pools, we have to be careful about the ratings. The best way to do it is through a force rating, force ranking. Then what Mario spoke about, talent analytics. I didn't know that he was talking about talent analytics, but I emphasize and endorse what he said here. Where you use data, analytics, at arriving at decision making about your talent, the talent pool. So let's talk a little bit about talent within the next 10 minutes before we conclude. So developing a talent program involves integrated plans and processes. You can't again do it in isolation. Like I said about potential appraisals, I gave you a set of criteria. That's not the end all and be all of it. You can add to that criteria, delete from that. But you can't use each one of those in isolation. To get a well-rounded opinion, you need to use all of them together. Similarly, in talent involves integrated plans and processes. And I begin by, this is my favorite topic about sourcing, selecting, and recruitment. If that is not right, you can't get talented people into the organization. There is a saying, recruit mediocre people and you become a dwarf. You means your organization. Recruit high performers and you become a giant. So don't be shy of hiring high performers all the time. Sometimes they can be more costly. The problem is that at recruitment time, although we may have pay bands, remuneration plans, and all of that, if a very good talented guy is available for you to recruit versus a person who can do the job in the job description, sometimes we prefer to go with the guy who can do the job for us and not with this high potential, high talented guy. Why? Because that person is more costly. But in the long term, that is an investment in the organization. At Hayleys, we don't stinge on that. If we come across a person that we think is of value to the organization, we hire the person at any cost. But the panel of interviewers must be very convinced that this person is of that value to the company. You have to be sure of that. So to be sure of that, you need to have proper recruitment methodologies. How much time do we really spend on recruiting people? How much time do we spend at an interview? How often do we read through an CV, maybe 1 or 2 days before an interview, and write down things that you want to probe? And are we prepared for an interview? At interview panels, do we concentrate on the candidate or keep talking among us, the panelists? Do we have structured questions to ask the candidate? Or we just ask anything that comes to our mind while seated there? Sometimes, most of the time, we make hiring decisions on a 5-minute conversation. And then we spend more time trying to get rid of the individual during the probation period. Or even after. Sometimes we go and confirm the person also, knowing very well the person is not performing. And then some guy comes to HR and says, no, we need to get rid of this guy. This keeps happening all the time. Right? So if you are talking about talent, first of all, you need to have a proper structured hiring process in place. like we talked about even psychometric tests, to make sure that you don't hire problem children. Then you need to have competitive pay programs. Not to say we can't afford that, this person is too expensive for us. That expense can be an investment. Even if you have pay bands, you can go beyond the maximum of the pay band and call it a personal allowance or whatever, and give the guy what the person wants. Right? Then learning and development opportunities. Structured learning and development opportunities. Is your organization, does it have a learning culture? When I say learning culture, it starts from the top. From the managing director downwards, is there a mandatory rule that everybody goes through so many hours of training for a year, or so many number of training programs for a year? Most of the time, it's a nuisance for people to be released for training programs. People are nominated 1 hour before the program says, the guy is busy, can't be released. So that's where, when you don't have a learning culture. If you have a learning culture, that means under no circumstances, once a person is nominated for a program, that person attends. Then what mechanisms have you got in place, pre and post training? Right, so there are a lot to go in that area, but all this goes to developing talent and identifying talent. Identifying talent, maybe from hiring time, the supply chain has links. Like I said, at hiring time, you don't know the talent of the individual, what the person is capable of doing. But you assume that the person will be able to perform the job description. But beyond that, once the person is in, what do you do? Then, like we discussed, the performance management processes, all of it is interlinked. Then what kind of retention programs do you have for your key people who are on the talent pool? Do you have commitment bonuses? Do you position their pay at a certain level, the percentile positioning of pay? In our company, we always try to position the 3 raters and the 4 raters above the midpoint, above the market median of a pay range. We try, based on, of course, affordability and all that, but we try to do that, and most of the time we do it, so that you retain the person. Some companies have benchmarks. Some companies say all our 4 raters should always be positioned at 20% ahead of the market median, which means 120th percentile or 120%. 100% is the market median. Our 3 raters should always be positioned at 110, 10% ahead of the market median for retention, because people think that a person will move a job for at least 20% higher than what you're earning now. So if you're paying that, you have chances of retaining the individual. So all this goes down to, again, an effective performance management system where the individuals are rated properly. If you have rated somebody 4 and the guy's performance is 2, and then you are paying 20% more than the midpoint, that's a disaster. Right. Then promotion and transition programs. What structured promotion programs do you have? Do you have internal vacancy notices where everybody in the organization is given an opportunity to apply for jobs that are available? And how do you transition them? Are they mobile across other geographies if you have business locations outside Sri Lanka? So all these activities should be linked together in a talent management program. And of course, you need to have technology from hSenid. I'm joking. I have to say hSenid because I'm speaking here. You need to have technology. Analytics, what Mario spoke about, that comes from your automated systems, where you generate reports, data about individuals, right? And major aspects of talent, sorry about that. Yeah, the performance management, leadership development, identifying talent gaps at the hiring process, what we spoke earlier, should be consistent. Not do it in bits and pieces as and when we want. There should be a structured program. Year in, year out, these things happen. So competency-based talent management programs, decisions are driven by organizational core competencies. So that's another area. When you're identifying talent, you have a set of behavioral competencies for the organization. Then you should have technical competencies for each job role, so, which will help you, again, identifying the talent. Because you know this guy is at this level now, but if he was to do this job effectively or more strongly, he should be at this level. So what is the gap? And to close the gap, what do we need to do? And then if you need to have architecture of competence, or competency architecture, where it's documented and people are trained. At Hayleys, we do that. We have built in our behavioral competencies to our performance management system. And we have competency dictionaries, where the 8 behavioral competencies are documented at each level, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, with the proper descriptors. And some of our sectors, I think Upulka here is here from our Deep Products Group, HR manager, they have just started training their employees on competencies and the supervisors on competencies. That means how do you measure and evaluate the competence level of an individual? What are the key words in those descriptors? So it's all this is integrated. And using competencies to build job descriptions. Once you have identified a job role, then you identify your technical competencies, and based on those technical competencies, you build your job description, identifying the minimum qualifications, the minimum level of experience, the required soft skills, and all of that. And finally, we talked about challenges faced by organizing effective implementation of PMSs. I think most of this I spoke at some stage or the other. Number one is the senior management commitment to effectively implement performance assessments or potential assessments. Senior management must be committed. If you analyze in most organizations, the performance assessment, if you have a program, a PMS program or a potential assessment program, for the senior management, it doesn't apply because the senior management doesn't engage in doing it. We expect the people below us to do it, but we don't. So there is no commitment there. So it has to, most multinational companies, the first thing is that the MD or the CEO has to be involved in the process. The MD or the CEO has to have the goals and objectives. Or that person's potential should have been appraised. And then the next level of management and the next level, and it should go down. If that doesn't happen, we only confine all of this to paper and becomes an annual ritual. For the sake of doing it, we just do it and document it and keep it aside. Creating a performance and learning culture, we spoke about that. Then, of course, the quality of the systems that you have. Quality means the supervisors who engage in implementing the appraisals, how well do they do it? How objectively do they do it? Without bringing in any biases. Then the quality of the goals that are set. If you set soft goals, then people easily achieve. And then the people get rated higher, and there is no impact to the business. Always the goals are linked to the business goals. So, but if the individual goals are soft, then there is no effectivity of the system. And then, of course, the quality of feedback. I think my friend Roseanne is here, and she does, she's freelancer, and she does feedback training for our people on a regular basis. Every year in our performance management cycle, we do various things. One, we have a design team. Then we have what we call the training team, where we do training on the systems. Then we have what we call the refreshers. Every year before January, February, before the goals are set and before the feedback takes place, refreshers are done for everybody to remind them how to set goals and how to give and receive feedback. And then once the cycle is over, we do a review. Has the cycle worked well? What are the things that needs to be improved? What are the things that needs to be discarded? So these activities take place for sustainability. Right? So what it all boils down to, identifying potential, identifying talent, is that you need to have effective assessment systems, and which should be also technologically driven.
More is effectiveness. hSenid, 15 years of empowering more.